Today we're talking about strategy on the Arguing Agile podcast.
So today on the podcast, we have a guest, Nisha Patel.
Currently, I'm a product manager. Yes.
Cute thing.
Big claps, big claps. I come from a background in healthcare. Eventually was working at a tech company, and then eventually I transitioned to product thanks to the community coming together and really helping me to achieve my dreams and picking me up and raising me up. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
All
Happy
your
to have
dreams
you
come
here.
true. Nisha is the organizer of the Tampa Bay Product Group.
That's
and
right.
We had a session recently called Executing Product Strategies. And I will be honest, I was a panelist and I over-prepared. Big time.
You certainly did. I spent as much as 0 time preparing for that.
Yes, but you are not a product manager, so that would be why.
That is true.
I like to live my life over-prepared for every situation. That's the life of a product manager, kids.
Yeah, tread carefully. Okay.
The research I did for preparing for the panel, I wanted to bring to the podcast because there was so much there. We had a suggestion that every single panelist suggested, which is write your strategy on the wall, publicize it, broadcast it, get it out there so everyone can see it. And I was thinking about that one between podcasts about how few times, if ever, I've ever actually seen someone be like, these are our strategies. Yeah.
I think the larger a company, the less chance you have of seeing that written down somewhere. Smaller companies or startups, you may see that. But yeah, I haven't seen that in many companies either.
And that was inspiration for that topic. During one of the very first meetings, we talked about, okay, everyone, what do you want to see? What topics do you want to hear? And that was one that came up so many different times. And it's one that doesn't really get talked about very often. Like, we talk about so many other agile product topics, but we don't really hear about product strategy. So that was the inspiration behind it.
Over to you. Why is that?
Well, you see Bigfoot as often as you see product strategies written down. And the main reason I see, if I had to distill it down to one reason, is because we talked about this at the meetup as well, that cycles are getting shorter and shorter, right? And so if you write something down, it's almost like you're committing to it. And when you commit to something and time goes by and you haven't made it, it's very uncomfortable. So people are deliberately either obfuscating it or they're just playing it safe, right? They're playing it safe. Don't write it down. That way we can't be beholden to it if we don't make it. We probably won't.
Is it I'm trying to skate out from accountability so I don't want to write it down and publicize it? Is that what it is?
I think that is true in larger companies, especially, right? People are not necessarily looking to commit anymore. Financial statements, you'll see it in annual reports specifically. Yeah. But remember, an annual report is a lagging indicator, right? It's just looking back. And it's easier to say things you did as opposed to a strategy that you're aspiring to achieve.
Yeah, but annual report, that's so last year.
Ooh, annual reports are still out
Quite
there.
literally, that's not enough time to adjust. What if I told you I don't want to write down a strategy because that locks us into a course of action and we need to be more agile? What if I use agile as a weapon in this discussion?
And so that's another thing that people do is they say, well, we need to be nimble. We need to pivot quickly.
Right.
So we won't write it down. But unfortunately, if you don't write it down, or if at least you don't visualize it with your employees, how will they know where their North Star is? Right? How will they navigate to somewhere, wherever that is, that you want them to? They won't. But at least when they don't do that, you won't get warm under the collar because people aren't going to tell you, hey, listen, your strategies aren't really working. Because you say, what strategies?
So you talk about quickly pivoting. How do you know that you're pivoting in the right direction if you're not keeping that strategy in mind? So why is it that we're pivoting in this direction if it's potentially not the right direction to pivot in?
Right.
So that also is something that is basically event driven. You know something's not working, so you pivot. But to your point, you don't know if the direction you're pivoting toward is the right way to go, it's even a good thing to do or not. It's just that staying on course is not a good thing to do.
Well, I'll give you, when we get into the framework, I'll come back to what you just asked. Because what you just asked, if you're building your actions to advance your strategy, every single one of those actions should be measurable in some way. Because otherwise, what are we really doing, right? Like every product manager on a planet has probably interfaced with this executive that's like, oh, I know what to build. Just do what I say. They're the rhinos. Oh no, is it rhino? No, I'm sorry. They're the
zebras. They're the zebras.
Zero evidence, but really arrogant. Like that's zebra. That's these people. They're super overconfident. They're like, well, I have intuition. Some of the times, this is founders. When the company grows to a certain point and the company outgrows them and the intuition that they have is not good enough for the size and also this is funny, I don't think about strategy this way, but strategy involving growing your org, like an internal looking strategy. I've seen that blow up in a lot of people's faces. They have no plan for scaling. They have no plan for how they're going to reorg their teams.
Yeah, but then again, I know we're going to come back to this as well, but they may not care. They just want to grow, because when you grow to a certain level, you get rewarded. And once you get your reward, you can up and leave.
Buy your yacht.
It's also a legit strategy from their own individual standpoint, right? But yeah, it doesn't do the organization any good.
So I have a question for you. Where is your strategy posted?
Mine as in what, my company's strategy? Or my own strategy? What are you asking?
Your team strategy.
My team strategy is on a dashboard in a wiki. So it's available to everybody. They're forced to see it in a way because the wiki is the one-stop shop for everything.
Sure.
And it's usually at the very top, followed by some dashboards that are kind of aimed at leadership, and then another set of dashboards that are aimed at middle management, and finally dashboards that are for team level folks. They bookmark those so they don't have to go through all of that every time. But at certain meetings, even on or off Cadence, we would look at that, right? We would look at that and say, this is where we're going. This is our North Star. Whatever anyone's doing should be aligning to where we're going. If you're not, let's have a conversation.
Right.
So what is your cadence at the team level?
The team looks at that pretty much 3-4 times a sprint. We do 2-week sprints.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
You have to. You really do. Because, I mean, look, I'll give you an example of the sort of thing that came up not too long ago when the same question was asked. Whatever you're working on, is it aligned to what we're doing, right? And somebody said, well, I'm evaluating this new tool. I think it's going to be fantastic for everybody, but it's not up there. I don't want to shut that down. That's a legit thing to do. We didn't think about that when we wrote that up, but it's the right thing to do.
Sure.
Just put it in the backlog. Let's do it properly. Let's account for it.
I have two answers, and it depends on the state of the company that I've been at. In small companies, it works a lot like what Om just said, is I try to have the strategies that we're engaged in, I try to have them be somehow included in the day-to-day work that people are touching. The best example that I've ever implemented of making this visible is I went into the CEO's office and I said, this is your corporate Kanban now. And every card on your corporate Kanban is a strategy that we are engaged in doing. Because how many strategies can you have in the air at one point in time? You know what I mean?
No more than you have fingers.
There's an upper limit depending on your company size. But in the company size where I can walk into the CEO's office and be like, we're writing this on the board now. Like they had an upper limit, 2, 3, 4 strategies at the most, right? Yeah. And I think the book Traction says 3 to 7.
That's about right.
Other teams I've been on, it's in a Google Doc where we have agreed like this is the mission of the organization. This is our vision for what the future looks like when we accomplish the mission. And then these are the main strategies that all the products and everything follow. And it's written in a Google Doc and we revisit it once a year. And that, like it's kind of, you know what I mean? Like new people when they onboard go look at it and that's about.
They can't look at it because they don't have access. So that's typically what happens. I'd like access, please. You know, I don't know who this person is. Not giving them access.
And those are the companies that actually took the time to write down the strategies. And then everybody else
wing it.
You know, it's either they have no strategic thinking, so they don't value any of that, or strategy is not a focus because they're wrapped up with other things, making plans and doing this, and they put things in like vanity metrics they're watching. So there's no time for strategy.
We're going to unpack some of the reasons, right, why this happens in this podcast.
But yet the best that I've seen it done is each strategy. I think that company used Jira. But the best company that I've seen, they have like, I can't remember what the system calls it. I think there's epics or super epics in Jira, I think. Super epics.
Super epics or initiatives or something. I can't remember.
I think, anyway, initiatives, that's what they're called. Yeah, they're called initiatives. So they have a higher level work item than an epic. It's initiative and then epics and then stories, right? So that company used the initiatives as strategies,
which is fine. I mean, look, you could use anything as far as I'm concerned.
Well, it gives you one board. That's
but it gives you a single board. As long as they're frequently visiting that,
Right.
and ensuring that people are marching to that,
Right.
that's fine.
Well, now the nice thing is
Right, lined up.
it lined up with the teams
Yeah,
as well.
it
So you
doesn't
could say
really-
these super epics or the initiatives crossed teams because you could see all the stories that the teams had roll back up to the strategies. So that was nice. But you like with that tool, once you have like 200 people, you're like, you need to get another tool or Jesus or something like that.
Well, we didn't have Jesus, but I did use another tool and a very large program to try and kind of get my arms around this. We use AHA. AHA is a very commonly used tool, right, for this purpose.
You got to pay the
You
AHA, though,
have
so.
to pay the
Yeah.
piper. AHA is not cheap. I believe it's somewhere around $1,800 per user per year. So you just
Wow.
have a few users in there. Fortunately, to look is free. To comment is free as well. So that's okay. Because all those people that say they want access, they get view access, and they can make comments, they can mention people, and that's about all they need. What you really need, though, is to get people together and say, what is it that we're in business to do? Brainstorm that and create those ideas and strategies, put them out there. And here's the best part that I like, and I don't work for the company, but I like this part about the tool, and that is you can publish that on an internal website. So it's real time, and all you have to do is share the URL with people and say, you want our strategies? Bookmark this URL. That's it. They don't even have to get into the tool itself, so they don't need a licensing issue. There's none of that, right? And then the other thing is, if you're suffering from that disease where you have to actually produce PowerPoint presentations every week or whatever, you could easily do that at a click of a button. It will spin that out into a PowerPoint presentation with your own branding and whatnot. So you don't spend time polishing a PowerPoint, which is useless as an exercise. One of the challenges in keeping it visible is, to your point about a 20-person company, that especially if they're co-located, great. You could put that up in the hallway. But if you're virtual, how do you do that? How do you visualize it if you're virtual?
Well, Microsoft has not allowed me to write things on the wall.
But they probably will come out with a product called Microsoft Wall with Clippy included. All I can suggest here is use tools like, whatever you use, Teams or whatever. You can create channels, and that is a channel that everybody is corralled into, and that's where you have to do whatever is needed with the tool set you have. I mean, I use Wiki because it's free and it's built into Azure DevOps.
Sure.
We use it for a lot of other purposes too. So people are already visiting there, right? And that was part of the rationale. So if you're already going there, how about this? And just start with an exclamation mark and it goes all the way to the top. That's how sorting works.
Closing question for you. What is your cadence where your team or you have done that well? How often have you revisited your strategy?
Ideally, I'm revisiting the strat. If everything's working up through the system, then whenever we have some kind of scaled session where all the people that are contributing to the strategy are talking, right? I'm assuming your company has something like that on a regular basis. It's like at my current company, the weekly is a cadence where we're reviewing everything and the swim lanes that we go across our products. But very easily, you could pivot the swim lanes that we go across to be the strategies, and then you're not having a product conversation. Hey, what problems are you solving in this product? For leadership, you're having a much higher level conversation of what strategies are advancing this week. We don't do it that way, but we very easily could do it that way. This other company with the whiteboard that I was talking about going to the CEO's office is because I didn't want to get bogged down in any one team because they had some territorialism and stuff that I had to solve as a product person. I didn't want to get bogged down in that, so we would talk at a strategy level, and that kind of just cleared up all the tech versus the customer service versus this people, the developers versus sales, this, all those little things. Yeah. It just clears all that up when you're like, where are we going to win next? Boom, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sometimes those little things aren't so little, right? Feudalism is real. So one of the things you could do if you have that board with product as a lane, for example, you could easily superimpose a lane on top of it, which is the strategies that these products are fulfilling, right? And they're available to you. You collapse them if you don't want to see them. But with leadership, you would collapse the product one first, go with the strategy, and then open up the products that are fulfilling the strategy. That could be an option.
So hard pivot. We may or may not be returning from a segue, but I want to pivot us into a lot more tactical advice. And for that purpose, I'm going to highlight the Richard Rumelt from the book Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. I'll go find it in the editing and I'll put the picture of Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And there are three items that make up the kernel of good strategy in that book. I highly recommend you read that book. I'm going to outline the three components here. Number one is a diagnosis, a clear definition of the challenge at hand. Number two is the guiding policy. your overall approach to dealing with the challenge. And number 3 is a set of coherent actions. So this is the loose framework that I use when I am constructing a strategy that we're going to move forward with. So I will give a diagnosis, right? And sometimes the diagnosis ends up being incorrect.
Sometimes it's just an opinion.
Yeah, true. That's why we need to measure things to find out if it's just my opinion.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start off with the diagnosis. Again, we actually did 2 back-to-back episodes a while ago, like episode 10-something, where we talked about mission, vision, strategies, goals, that kind of stuff. We had the little pyramid, right? Stormy was on that podcast. And then the following podcast, we constructed the strategies for the podcast. And we actually still run with those strategies most of the time. Sometimes we're very loose with
you have to adjust
with the arguing strategy. Yeah, sometimes we're very loose with it. But you have a diagnosis. Again, you go to the doctor. The doctor says, you've got these symptoms. I think you have strep. Based on my expertise, I think you have strep. And then he'll give you a guiding policy. My guiding policy for strep is take 2 Motrin, call me in the morning, and keep it elevated. That was the.
Sure that's strep?
Take
these antibiotics for 3 months.
Are you sure that's strep, doc? Doc will say, listen, I'm not a very good doctor. Get out of my office. Just like an executive.
But we all can dream.
And then he'll give you coherent actions. This is take the medication this many milligrams, this many times per day or whatever, and for this amount of time. Very specific things that you can measure, and the doctor will say, did you take the medication? And then whatever, like show me your evidence, and then get out of my office. But the point here is, like, what is your diagnosis? What is wrong with the market? What is wrong? What is the pain point of the customer? What is the thing that you're trying to solve? That's a diagnosis. You have to have a theory. I mean, even if you're doing Eric Ries Lean Startup, like you have a theory, right? And then he says, okay, go test the market for your theory. So what I did was I put together the diagnosis, the guiding policy, set of coherent actions. I put together for a lot of companies that are very familiar. We're only lightly breaking the working agreement. Don't worry, companies that I'm really going to take to the mat are not on this list.
Right.
Yeah.
And none of us work for those companies.
That's right. And
this is a disclaimer.
The other thing I added to this list is I added as the first coherent action in the coherent action category, I added what their original MVP was. So again, I'm sprinkling a little lean startup in. Any strategy that you just declare and you decide you want to engage in, it really should have an MVP before you go off to the development team. Nisha, what's a strategy? What's a business problem that somebody would have that we would try to solve to represent my strategy electronically?
Okay, I'll give you one. So, problem that I'm trying to solve is that I want to be able to, as a event organizer, I want to be able to find spaces that will be able to host my event within capacities or within specifications that are predefined. So if I, for example, need someone that has like a tech hookup, or maybe I want there to be a quiet space where I can have a round table discussion, or maybe I want to be able to host an event with 30-something, 40-something people and also be able to project slides. I want to see in my area who's able to do that.
I like it.
I want to see who's able to do that for free. I want to be able to see who's able to do that for a cost. And if there is a cost associated, then how much are they going to charge?
I like it. It's Uber for event organization.
Without the wheels.
Without wheels
it's
optional.
It's Airbnb.
Right.
It's Airbnb for events.
Right. Also, meetup.com. What the heck? Like, how are you missing out on this segment of the market? Like,
if you're listening, this strategy is not for free, so you have to pay for this.
Yeah, probably because, again, it is closer to Airbnb, their model, because you have to reach out and build that network of people willing to host their space.
If you want to take this event, or if you want to take this idea and turn it into a reality, go ahead and contact me at linkedin.com/NishaP299 and let me know how much you'd like to buy this off of me for.
I'll give you $350.
These ideas cost money.
So again, I have a couple of these cases. We're going to just quickly zing through them. There's no rhyme or reason to how these are up here. But anyway, this is the framework that we're going to use. Diagnosis, guiding policy, set of coherent actions. All right, so let's start off with Dropbox. Like Dropbox, the diagnosis here is people need an easy way to access and sync their files across multiple devices, which, by the way, the investors did not believe in. They're like, no way. Why do people need that?
If you've ever had this pain that you really experienced firsthand, you would know why. It was terrible.
I could word this diagnosis as an actual diagnosis to say like the pain point is, you know what I mean? Like it's super hard for people to access and sync all their files across the devices they use the most or whatever, phone, desktop, whatever other devices they have, iPads, whatever. You know what I mean? This is the pain point that users have. That's the first thing we're calling out. Right. And then guiding policy. Well, we're going to create a simple, user-friendly cloud storage solution. When Dropbox was creating this, there was no cloud storage was not really in vogue like the way it is today. But we're going to create some kind of user-friendly solution that automatically syncs your files and is painless for you. Right? That was their guiding policy. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, it is very complicated to take from all these different devices, operating systems, hardware, whatever, and figure it out. So we're going to create this video out of thin air.
Magically, if it could do these things, you would have this problem.
So we're going to show you a video of this is the way that the solution would work. Would this be something that you're interested in? People looked at it and said, well, actually, that would be pretty slick if I could just automatically, the files I need are on every computer I sit down to use. No.
Yeah, this is an example of, early on in the early stages, you don't have a solution, but what you're going after is mindshare and validation of your idea. That's what you're doing without investing anything. It's just a video. It doesn't take long to create a video.
But again, this is why if I ever did a presentation, you know what I mean? My TED Talk is you guys have really messed up MVP. And like we need to take it all the way back to the beginning and fix the term MVP, because for years I've said I can't use the term MVP. I have to use something else, and it's ridiculous, because MVP should just be like you see up here. MVP is, hey, that guiding policy you came up with. We need to create a simple, user-friendly cloud storage solution. How are you going to test that on the market to see if that's really what the market wants? Or is that just like your opinion, man?
A lot of companies are falling foul of this one, right? So the person in charge just says, this is slick, this is how it's going to work. Right. And this is the best thing ever since sliced bread. People will use it, they will love it. No validation. That's the opinion right there.
What customer feedback or what research is going into this guiding policy?
That's a good question. I mean, so if they start with a video, right, you don't really have any affirmation or anything, any signals from your customer, except conceptually, this would be great. They haven't really thought through security, for example, right? What happens when files drop halfway through? Does it pick up from where it left off? Or does it start all the way from the beginning again? They don't think of all those things.
Yeah, I think the crux of what you're asking is a intuition versus evidence question.
It is.
How much of it do you make up based on your expert knowledge or your domain knowledge, and how much of it is you go fishing for stuff? We covered this a little bit on the Alex podcast. We had an intuition versus evidence podcast, and the takeaway at the end of that podcast, spoiler alert, the takeaway at the end, it's not really spoiler, but the takeaway from that podcast was you need, in order to break through and come up with truly unique ideas, you need intuition. And in order to get intuition, you need some kind of domain expertise to a certain level.
Okay, so in this example, we're talking about Dropbox. I want to say that Dropbox was a little bit ahead of their time, right? Like when they came about, they were putting together things that an idea that was not, like it was something that was true innovation. So how does that work? You're an innovator. I guess I'm kind of answering my own question here a little bit, is like, you're not keeping up with the times, because now when you think about cloud storage sharing across devices, you think of OneDrive, you think of Google Drive, you think about these cloud storage solutions. How do you stay on the front of innovation?
I think
it's hard left.
Your question for people listening, they shouldn't construe that Dropbox is no longer innovating. Like, they're still a relevant player in the space, right? It's just that their pricing strategies are different now compared to other people that come in and compete on price alone, like Google, for example. And you can get 15 gigs of storage for free, right? Dropbox, if I recall, they used to give you 2 gigs for free. Right, and then you have to buy on a tiered level, buy more space, etc.
Well, Dropbox is I actually use and pay for Dropbox because I really like the product. And Dropbox, they have Elena Verna working for Dropbox now. I really like her as a product manager.
She's good.
But Dropbox, I know a little bit about how they got to where they're at today, and they expanded horizontally, meaning that they went Dropbox for business, and then they did Dropbox for
home.
They expanded into Dropbox for like professional document writing and collaboration on documents, and they expanded into a bunch of horizontal markets. One that wasn't specifically like personal file sharing for B2C consumer users.
Sure.
Yeah.
But that's probably because they thought that's where the biggest buck was.
Yeah.
And probably was, honestly. I mean, individual users probably aren't going to amount to much when it comes to revenue, even allowed for scaling, right, or volume initially to get traction in market. So that's part of it. The other part of it, to your question around innovation, is they didn't stop innovating. I mean, they came out with the video first, and then they had to come up with a structure that worked, right? A cloud infrastructure that actually worked, where you could have a folder on your local machine, you could just drop files into it, and it would automatically be synced. It's pretty slick when it came to it, right? In the early days, I was very impressed. I still use Dropbox today for work, right? And it is really good.
Yeah.
It works really well for my needs, anyway.
But you understand the video demonstration was not really to like prove all the different verticals. What did I say? So horizontal, whatever. It wasn't really to prove that like these are all the different businesses we can break into. It was because the diagnosis, the investors didn't believe that was a problem.
That's
so
right.
the video was to show the investors how easy it could be to convince like, hey, I understand you're saying this is not a problem. Let me prove to you how easy it could be with this video and convince you that, oh, that is a problem. And now you're willing to give me money
That's exactly
to go build
right.
my solution.
That's how that's how it panned out. They got money based on showing the video, right?
Now I say on the podcast all the time, the Silicon Valley companies are a love story in there. It's like a love story of one. It's like watching a romantic comedy where one person falls in love with themselves. So they're a little weird as examples, and they won't be the last Silicon Valley company on here. I think of MVPs as exploring a market, like actual users. I don't think of it as trying to get more money from people.
Right.
So it's a little weird. But that's the Dropbox example. So let's move on quickly because I feel like we stayed on there a really long time. So DoorDash, there's a big demand for convenient food delivery from restaurants in your area, basically. That's the diagnosis. Hey, why don't we let people order from restaurants and then we'll just bring it to them? I think there's a market for that. That's the diagnosis, right? The guiding policy, build a platform that connects the customers with the local restaurants and then the delivery drivers that are in the area. So connect all three of these people. Like kind of what you were saying is like they connect the people that want to host events with the people that have space that is basically just sitting idle, and then kind of figure out the finances, right? That's the guiding policy. So what was their MVP that kicked off exploring this guiding policy and the strategy? They started with a landing page of PDF menus for local restaurants in one specific area.
And it was really simple. It just simply had the name of the restaurant and a snapshot in time of the menu.
Right.
That menu may have changed,
Right.
but that's okay.
Yeah.
At least it's a start. We're going to create a platform called Event Space where people can do those things and meet those needs. No one's meeting them. We're going to create that.
They aren't. I have sifted through the interwebs. I've tried to look at other people that have the same need that I do, and I haven't been able to find it.
I mean, quite honestly, it's in and of itself, it's a great business idea because the real estate market is already terrible. And I would imagine that anyone that's stuck in real estate because they signed a contract or whatever, if they can get paid, even if it's $100 or whatever, if they can get paid for using their facilities when none of their employees are there, I mean, why would you not? Every nickel and dime counts. Yeah, that's wild. More to come, yeah. DoorDash. So the interesting thing about DoorDash is they did this in a specific local area first because they had their team
POC,
had to go get the menus for the local restaurants. So that means whenever they spun up in new cities, I don't know how many cities they spun up in until they figured out how to connect with the restaurants and people wanted on board, but I would assume it was a lot that they had to physically go to those cities or hire people in those cities to be like, hey, get menus, load them onto the platform, take pictures or whatever. Or maybe they integrated with Yelp or some of the other places that have pictures of menus.
Open Table. Yeah.
Right. But that's DoorDash. So you see the MVP there. Hey, people will actually go to this site with all the menus on it. And
yeah, what's in it for the people is choice, right? They can see the choice of restaurants instead of going one by one by one.
Hey, our friends from Airbnb, here they are. Diagnosis. There's a gap in the market for affordable, unique accommodations during high-demand events. It wasn't rent your house to me. It was when there's high-demand events in an area and all the hotels are all booked and we're over capacity. We can find a gap in that. Connect travelers with local hosts willing to share their living space. Test the concept. Did MVP. Test the concept by offering air mattresses during a design conference.
Which, I mean, it's fascinating that they actually did that.
When you take the diagnosis and you skip the guiding policy, so just
I'm with you.
Okay?
Yeah.
And you just connect the diagnosis to the coherent action. It is absolutely bonkers. So you're telling me that there's a gap in the market where someone's going to sleep on an air mattress in my house? Get out of here. No, absolutely not.
That's precisely the reaction they got when they first tried it, I imagine.
Ow, I'm not going to go into a stranger's house. I'm not going to get into a stranger's car.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point in the way that I like good points brought up. Get out of here.
I'm bringing the arguing to the Arguing Agile.
I 100% agree with you. I think about this one as a product manager. Just because I've written a diagnosis and a guiding policy, and then I'm sitting down with my team to say, what actions could we do to try this on the market? My team can immediately start by saying, like, Brian, that guiding policy is bananas. Why don't, like, here's 2 or 3 other guiding policies that we can do instead. It's like, this, congratulations, you have strep. And you're like, oh, me? And it's like, yeah, hey, take 2 Motrin and keep it elevated. And you're like, are you sure about that guiding policy? How about, like,
give me some antibiotics
why don't
instead.
Why don't you give me some antibiotics and tell me to rest? And
okay, well, Brian, did you know that maybe this is not medical advice? That if you become more active, then it gets your blood flowing. You'll be able to get rid of the infection sooner. If you're talking about from a more holistic point of view, then this actually isn't so bonkers.
I like where you're going with this.
So how?
Don't go to the doctor. Just run around the block. You'll be all right.
Exactly.
Walk it off.
Exactly.
Quite literally.
Walk
Drink
it
some
off.
scotch.
Rub some dirt in it.
You know the nice thing about where you're going with this? If we all sat around and we just, hey, there's a gap in the market for office space for organizers, and we all sat around, we probably could think about a half a dozen ways just before we even got out of this room to test if that truly is a problem. And none of those should involve building software. My challenge of putting all these together is every single one of these guiding policies has a test to check if there's signal that connecting travelers with local hosts willing to share the living space, like if that really is the guiding policy, that is the correct one. Because if we go around and we're like, hey, who do we know with like extra bedroom or a house that they're not using that would be willing to have 2 or 3 people sleep on air mattresses in their house that they're not using, and then all of us are like, that's crazy, I'm not asking anyone. You know what I mean? Like, we would immediately shoot down this guiding policy and start looking for other guiding policies.
It's not the technology that is necessarily the innovation. It's the idea.
Right.
So how are you going to identify your customers? So would you, as an early employee of Airbnb, go up to someone and say that? Would you say that to anyone that you know? Personally, I'd be probably a little hesitant because they'd be like, this chick is crazy. Like, I'm not going to talk to her. She just asked me if I could have some stranger come over and be in my... No.
Well, also, but also, it's different when you're waving cash. And you're like, hey, hey, like there's this conference in town. These people are going to be here for 2 days. Like, if you think about a hotel, the business model of a hotel for business, like, I have an idea. We're gonna buy some commercial real estate and we're gonna let people sleep there. Don't worry, it's illegal, but don't worry about it. We're not digging into that part of Airbnb, the illegal part. And we're gonna let people sleep there, and it's real close to the conference center because we know that, like, there's really no amenities there. There's nothing to do in the building. So in reality, people are only gonna sleep there like as long as they have to sleep there, and then they're getting out. So that's like the pitch to get the first people on board or whatever. Probably involved that as well. It's like, hey, it's a lot of money, and they're really doing nothing but sleeping and taking a shower, and that's it. You know, how much is that worth to you? And then we can negotiate on price. They probably was negotiating on price, but I think they, with their MVP, I think they were using, maybe it was their corporate office. I don't remember.
It was their personal space.
It was their personal space.
Yeah.
So they were the ones crazy enough. You know what I mean? And all they had to do was build enough platform where people that were also crazy enough or had extra real estate, people who owned an extra house and weren't using it, they just had to build enough where those people would be like, well, I can get some cash, like, as long as it's enough to make it worth it, and then it's just a matter of dialing it in. So
I think that's pretty much what happened.
I understand what you're saying. Like, normal people, absolutely, but if they can find the right people, I mean, there are people out there that have multiple houses that they just don't use it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So I 100% agree. If you disconnect the actions from the diagnoses, they sound crazy.
Absolutely.
Why would you do that though? Right?
Dude, I go back to
'Cause
our...
without a guiding policy,
No, go
any
back-
idea is as good as any other.
But if you go back to our
Why not?
earlier, what we said on the podcast earlier about why companies avoid strapping down to a strategy, like that, they are overconfident in their own intuition. They don't have that muscle of strategic thinking. Well, where are we going to go first? Well, we'll see if any of us have some extra space in our garage. That's a little crazy. Yeah, but if we can do that, then we can find people that have extra houses that they're just not doing anything with, or summer
pitch a
homes.
tent in your backyard. I mean,
Yeah.
any of these ideas are as good as any other.
Tent B&B.
But how do you keep these actions, and how do you take this guiding policy, and how do you maintain that while you're executing your product strategy, right? As you're delivering this, just really breaking down and looking at Airbnb, I'm like, have I stayed at Airbnbs? Yeah, absolutely. But looking at it like this, I'm like, yikes. Even now, like Airbnb is legit, right? At this, I'm like,
I did not put
why have I still...
I did not put Uber on this list either, but I mean, if you want to roll the Uber strategy back, the diagnosis there is like a lot of people are going from point A to point B, and if they just allowed a stranger to get in their car to also go with them halfway along their journey from A to B, because they're going there anyway, they can make some money. You're going to let strangers get in your car? That's crazy.
It's because there's a third party involved. That's what makes it okay.
It's the
because
unknown.
I'm not just going to give you're going to give me food and I'm going to give you money? How do I know I can trust your food?
You go to the restaurant to do that.
How do I know that like my check's going to clear? How do you know that I actually have money in my account? How do you know that you're actually going to get paid? There's banks.
Nisha, do you
True
go,
innovation. There's
do you go to many restaurants with your checkbook?
No.
You'd be like that person in Publix line. You're writing up like, how much is it? What?
How many cents?
All right, Airbnb. Let's see if we can find a more crazier one. Robinhood.
Oh, yeah. A little crazy.
There's a market for more accessible and affordable stock trading options, especially among younger investors, aka people that are mobile primary, because that's what. And also people that don't want to pay a commission. So the guiding policy here is you develop a commission-free mobile app, very user-friendly.
This audience is not going to go to a professional stockbroker, for example, and pay the commission. They are well researched. They know what they want to invest in. They are tech savvy, right? All of that. So great. I mean, the guiding policy nails it, I think. Commission-free, and it's an app. So you don't have to go talk to anybody, right? Do your research if you want, or don't, but you're going to use an app to do this in an easy-to-use way. Right?
And also,
User-friendly.
they exploited my favorite MVP in the world. Here's a wait list. Here's some screenshots of what it is. Here's a wait list. Because you don't have to do anything with a wait list. You're capturing everyone's emails. Hey, let me know when developments happen.
What is the name of the company? You come up with an idea, you put it in front of people, you say, do you want this? And if there's enough people who are interested, or enough people...
I know what you're talking about.
What is that?
Kickstarter?
I can't remember. No,
Kickstarter.
That's on my list.
Yeah. Yeah. Kickstarter's a good one.
Kickstarter's on the list.
Sorry,
No,
spoiler.
it's fine. We would have never got through this whole list anyway, so
Yeah, we
it's
probably
fine.
won't get through it all.
Here's Kickstarter. So the diagnosis here is creative projects often struggle to find traditional funding, while people are interested in supporting innovative ideas. This one's really worded.
It's
clunkily.
wordy.
I think it's what it's trying to say in very clunky terms. Again, this is first draft, so don't blame me. It is that the diagnosis here is, hey, people that want to create should be able to broadcast their idea out into the world and get funded by people that are interested in an idea, that want to be in the ground floor of your creative thing, whatever that thing is.
Yeah, and that's true. And furthermore, people that are actually willing to put money into it because they're interested, they get rewarded because you're the early adopter. So you get cheap prices, right? You get the cheapest price you're going to get.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's no guarantee if the product will ever actually materialize.
Yeah. So the guiding policy here is, we want to build a platform that connects creative projects with potential backers and create this crowdfunding basically model. Right?
Otherwise, you're not going to.
So that's really all it is connecting backers with creatives.
That's what you're doing. You're
Right.
selling a promise, right? And pretty much everybody on Kickstarter shows something that is a very rough version of, it's going to get better, give us money to make it better.
I don't even know that it's so much promising as pitching, right? It's a very rudimentary pitch.
Yeah. Sometimes it's that. Kickstarter in reality is all over the place. Some people develop the entire product and then basically are bringing it to Kickstarter, introducing it to the market, trying to build the market through Kickstarter. Some people start off with just like a screenshot or or an explanation of what they're trying to do, and they don't develop anything ahead of time. So people use Kickstarter differently. Now, like, the creators pitch, the backers back it, and then to get funding to the creators. Creators need like an easier way to crowdsource their funding. I mean, that's
pretty much it. I think the only difference between pitching and the other is when you're pitching, you simply say, here's an idea, give us some money, right? When you're promising, you're saying, here's what we've done so far, and here's where we're going. You kind of share a little bit of a roadmap and say, by November, we'll have this. Yeah. Closer to October, you say, well, now it's going to be December. So they are kind of luring you along, but that's okay. You know, you get in cheap. I've invested money in this, in various products, and some have come out great, late. Some have come out nowhere, and I've got my money back.
Yeah.
Nothing to lose.
So the MVP here is sharing project ideas via email to gauge interest from backers. So like, hey, here's my email update. These are all the things that you can sign on to. I mean, the email is pretty cheap to test the market. You know, I don't know the history of Kickstarter, so I don't know exactly how they built those email lists and stuff over time, but
it's just through subscriptions.
Yeah, like it's email. Costs nothing.
Really, these days.
And then I actually went a little deeper on Kickstarter's about they developed the platform, the showcase, and people to back it, and then they implemented the reward-based systems and other tools to communicate. The Kickstarter still has things that they haven't built yet. I mean, the people that want to release their products have to add BackerKit to Kickstarter to actually be a distribution mechanism and a way to communicate with everyone. So Kickstarter's not even quite like they've done a lot of stuff to build. They built a lot of stuff, is what I'm trying to say, but they still have not gotten their complete arms around what this diagnosis is.
But they have a roadmap. Yeah. Strategic roadmap at least, which is good. Probably a really good one.
All right, we'll do one or two more examples, and then we'll cut to the end of this podcast. So Zapier, businesses need an easier way to integrate and automate their various web applications. So it's, hey, these steps that you're doing manually, they need to be automated, basically. So their guiding policy was to develop a platform that allows non-technical users to create automated workflows between apps, and they shop that around with an MVP of a hire a developer ad on Craigslist.
So a couple of keywords there in the guiding policy I want to highlight here. Non-tech users.
Yes.
Right? You didn't have to know how to code. And automated workflows, meaning you're not doing all of that drudgery manually. That's where the payback is, right? And then really interestingly, the way they actually gauged interest, to your point here, is just put an ad up on one of the worst platforms visually ever. Have you seen the look of Craigslist? It hasn't changed in decades. It's ugly, but it works.
I don't think it's changed since 1995.
It doesn't need to change though, right? No, it does what it does, and that's it. Yep. Hey, if you ever used Zapier, however you say it, if you ever used it, the first time it works for you, you're like, how did I ever live without this? And then you find 50 other ways you can leverage it. And then you go, this is the best thing ever. That was at least my experience when I used it. It's only got better over the years.
So the last one that I want to talk about is Stripe, which, by the way, I was around when Stripe debuted on the scene, and I will tell you, this was needed. It was like the development teams had very few ways to actually take payment from a customer. So developers need a simple way to implement online payments in their applications. Guiding policy: create a developer-friendly payment processing API that is super easy to integrate. What they did was they took 7 lines of code and they put it on Stripe's website and say, hey, our app is super easy to use. Copy these 7 lines of code, put them into your app. The 7 lines of code basically was the API call.
Sure.
Except I don't think that the actual API that was specified by the 7 lines of code, I don't think that existed.
It called something that had probably 100 lines of code. And it returned back a token, and they used that.
I don't know if the actual back end that worked. I don't know if it existed when they did this. Yeah. They're like, this is the call that you have to make, and that's it. Super easy. They didn't develop the whole site, but the idea was that their pitch was, copy these 7 lines of code, put it in your application. Now you've integrated with our app, and pay me the money.
We'll take it from here.
Right.
Exactly. What a fantastic idea, though. Think about it, right? In the market, there was nothing that did that. So they met a pain point, and they solved it, right? So if I had the need, basically process payments, this is very alluring for me.
I call this out. I wanted this as an example because my company that I was at was a very early adopter of Stripe because we wanted to break into B2C. There was no good options to take payment directly from the C part of B2C.
How was your experience with that company, with Stripe specifically?
It was very easy to. I mean, there are problems you will run into with Stripe, but it's easy to resolve them.
So I'm again going off hard left, but we just talked about two different ways to reach the customer, right? And they seem so non-traditional, right? So Stripe, 7 lines of code. Mm-hmm. In this case, your client is, in the previous example with Zapier, it's on Craigslist. Like, that's not what would come to me, like, at the forefront of my mind. I wouldn't say, oh, put in a very small bit of code to gauge interest. I would not say, let's go to Craigslist to gauge interest. Right. So when you say that one of your previous companies was an early adopter of Stripe, how early was this in the let me gauge interest type of phase? Or do you think it was more of when they became a little bit more established, when that code actually led to something, and not just to gauge interest, but also to feed into a funnel?
They were founded in 2010. Stripe was founded in 2010.
Oh, I remember Kickoff. They bought that.
In 2011, they received some investment capital. I think we were very close to 2012, but we were a very early adopter of Stripe. It was the developers who found that option. They were looking for an easy way to take payment in the application. The developers found it.
So if I can just call that out of, like, you know, in general, like looping it back to Agile, I think that to really truly be the best product, the best solution that you can be, it really does involve bringing everyone in and having a conversation, right? So like, that is such a great example of, you get a group of people together and take everyone's considerations into account. Like, from a developer's perspective, like, my tech lead will do, okay, well, I'm going to do some research, this, that, and the other thing. I'll report back. If my tech lead comes back with it's 7 lines of code, it's something that is simple to integrate, then yeah, of course it makes sense. As a how do you gauge interest? That developer is your in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if this is a B2C product, even though it's businesses that are the consumers here, basically you're going on the Stripe's site and you're signing up to, I don't know, whatever their tiers or plans are, to say, I want to process this many transactions, and they're just giving you an API key, and then you're done. You don't even need to talk to anybody until stuff starts breaking. And
early days, maybe.
Yeah, that was my experience. But
so after a while, when they iron out those kinks, right? Because let's face it, there's only so many types of cards, right? So once they figure that out and everything starts to work smoothly, you really have no recourse to go back and say, hey, this isn't working. It's just going to work.
But you're absolutely right. The developers found an option. And if you were at one of these companies, again, where you've got this overconfidence on intuition, is like, oh, the product manager will tell you what to do. They'll talk to the tech lead, and the tech lead will assign all the work items to the development team. You'll never find small companies like this. No,
they'll write 4,000 lines of code over 4 months.
Exactly.
And still not get what these guys can do for you.
And that is the beauty of true collaboration, of true Agile. You do what works for you. Okay, so you as a developer, what's going to work for you? What's going to make your life just a little bit easier? These 7 lines of code, or me telling you what to do?
Right. Yeah.
That's a much better conversation than, here's what I think we need to do, go do it. Right?
Absolutely.
Much better. And here's the problem we're trying to solve. How would you think we can solve it? Mm-hmm. And then myself as a developer, I'd find this or something like this and go, why do all the work when we can just buy this? It's cheaper. It gets us there quicker. Now, whether you actually go down that path or not, that's not my decision. My decision is just basically just saying, here's what you do. You make an informed decision. Yeah. You have budget, etc.
That's getting into I'm going to tell you as a product manager, based off of this research that I've done with X amount of people in whatever departments, I'm going to explain or translate the why to you. But then you're going to tell me as the developer how. I always say to my team, you are the experts. You tell me how you want to do it. You tell me the best way to do it. I will give you the shell, and you tell me how you're going to accomplish
It's
it.
interesting you said why, because a lot of times what I hear from product folks talking to developers is the what? This is what we need to do. Go figure out how to do it. And they go, okay. But if they knew why, guess what? They can actually think around the issue and figure out the best solution for the why. And to your point, though, when you have your developers or anybody else in with the people that really matter, which is the customer, that's where you get the best interactions, and then you have to enable and empower your developers to ask questions.
Right.
They could ask the customers directly, why do you need to do that? And based on the answers, they would come up with a much better fit for a solution than what was originally asked for by those very same customers, because they didn't really think through all the options, right? That's where the value is.
So we talked about case studies, and I hope by now we've given you enough examples to understand what the strategy looks like in 3 parts, like why you need a diagnosis, why you need a guiding policy to help you figure out how to resolve the pain point, and then the actions you're going to take. It's super easy to have MVPs. There's lots of companies here that are successful that had very low-cost MVPs. You can have an MVP for every strategy. If you have the right diagnosis, maybe the guiding policy is not right. Well, if you test it, you could probably test a couple guiding policies. This is why I want to do a podcast on the double diamond, like discovery delivery, that double diamond thing that everyone keeps showing, because I see that double diamond and I see the people that look at that double diamond and is like, oh, I can take the left side, that'll be somebody's job, and the right side will be somebody else's job. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Yeah, because if you're involving your entire team in the end-to-end discovery, then they will tell you, hey, there's this hot new product on the market called Stripe. We don't need to write 4,000 lines of code and go off for 6 months to deal with transaction processing for payments. We can just copy these 7 lines of code on Stripe's website, ask them for an API key, replace the stubbed out one with this one, and then
We're done.
Less than a day. The alternative is you would spend weeks, if not months, negotiating contracts and all of that crap.
But in the companies where they look at the product manager and they say, you manage a team, you come up with the, you know what I mean? Like that, there are companies like that. There's tons of companies like that.
And for if you're working for one of those companies, right? Just going back to our audience, we have some advice for you, right?
Do we?
Yeah, we do. We always have that.
What might that advice be?
That advice is keep that resume updated, because you really need to do better for yourself. I did want to point out something that for the audience that is not necessarily in the tech space. Pretty much everything we've gone through, the model, etc., it really is in the tech space for the most part, right? So strategy, specifically with product strategy, it predates all of this stuff. It predates the book you mentioned. A couple of gentlemen that specialized in strategy at Harvard, right? Michael Porter. Everybody's heard of the value chain now in various guises.
Porter's 5 forces.
So he was the guy that basically came up with all that. And then a little bit later, he partnered with a professor at Harvard. C.K. Prahalad is his name.
He just walked across the street.
Right across the river, right? So they came up with this idea that in order to come up with a good strategy, you have to have, they had a model, but they said there's things that you need to figure out around your own company first and then the market second. Why are you in business, right? So it's interesting that we talk about where is there a gap in the market, and we'll try and exploit that the best way we can. That's good. These guys said, why does your company exist? What are you here to do? So I wanted to just say this because people think that whatever we're discussing, it really only pertains to technology, the Stripes and the Dropbox. That's not true. Everything. It goes beyond technology if you really dig deeper a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. That's my rant over.
I'll ask one question. So let's perhaps say that I'm a product person, any product person at a big name company, that I'm just a cog in the wheel, right? How do I help to define that product strategy for my team to drive impact?
If you're a cog in the wheel, are there bigger cogs above you in the machine? Or is your cog one of the key ones that, so when you turn, 50 other cogs turn? Or are you turning when 50 other cogs turn?
This is not necessarily my scenario, but being a previous cog in a wheel, you wonder how can I be a change maker? How can I drive results?
Yeah.
So there's someone listening right now that's a cog in a wheel.
Two of them.
What are you going to tell them?
2 people listening, thank you, first of all, for staying with us this long.
Appreciate you.
But listen, if you're
You
in
guys
that
are survivors,
situation,
both of you.
If you're in that situation, though, I would pretty much resort to what Brian was saying earlier. Walk into someone's office and say, this is what I'm going to do. If you have something that, is better, I'm all ears. I'm going to sit down, right? Basically, what I'm saying is, I talked about this yesterday a bit as well, guerrilla tactics, right? So take it and own it. Because if you don't have a seat at the table, no one's going to come to you and knock on your virtual desk and say, please come in, we need you. No one's going to do that.
You're saying guerrilla tactics, but my brain is translating that into a bias for action. It's like you're showing, you're managing up and showing your managers that you are the person with the bias for action. Hey, I see it. Like, we seem to be engaged in this strategy. Is that right? Would you say that the problem in the market we're observing is this? Would you say that our diagnosis for how we're going to handle it is to do X, Y, Z, to carry out these actions, and then those actions being X, then Y, then Z, or whatever, right? Or Z, right?
Z.
Right? Yeah, you're right.
Yes, it is Z.
Like, would you say that? And then of course your manager at that point, because let's be honest, at the size of the organization, Nisha, that you're detailing,
They don't have leaders.
They don't have leadership.
Yeah, you have managers.
The leadership are like Bigfoot in this organization, mythical creatures. So you're saying, what actions from this guiding policy, right, would you say that you want to measure? Like, give me the actions that you want to measure. Then what am I being measured on if I'm a cog in the wheel that just carries out these actions? And I don't get a say in the problem space, and I don't get a say in the guiding policy
or the solution space.
And I'm being measured on these things. Mm-hmm. So the book is Playing to Win: How Strategy Really Works. A.G. Lafley, Roger Martin. And they basically boil strategy down. Like, they even have a simpler model than I have. I think it's a little too simple for me, but they say where to play and how to win. You have to put those two things together. If you're a product manager, or again, the cog in the wheel, it is far more difficult for someone else to determine where to play. And then they say, well, now you have to win where I told you have to play. So they're telling you, like, you're rolling onto the baseball field and you got a football in your hand. And you're like, where I got to play? Like, this is not even conducive to the materials. I came in football pads. What's happening here? But they're telling you, if you have no say in that, you're already starting behind. I understand where you're going. There are a lot of people out there that they don't get a say in the problem space. They don't even get a say in the solution space. They're just measured by the output. We're going to measure by output.
I agree with you that this is way too simplistic, first of all.
Baby steps is my answer to that. Yes. Walk back and go to your manager and be like, this seems to be the strategy that we're employed in. Do we agree on that? And try to reconstruct the strategy. What we did in like the first 15 minutes of the podcast, where we said they're either overconfident or on their intuition. Again, I know all the customers' problems, or they simply have no strategic thinking. I've been with a lot of people in software development that they go from feature to feature to feature. They have no strategic thinking.
I will say that as a previous cog and a previous wheel, that if you are working alongside a decision maker or working under a decision maker that not necessarily see your long-term vision. In my disc type, I'm an influencer. So I will try to make a connection with someone.
Sure.
So if that's not the person that's directly my manager, I also have the opportunity to get to leadership to translate a strategy that maybe the person that's working right alongside you doesn't have the full appreciation for. If you are trying to be a change maker, if you're trying to be a disruptor, you have an idea, something that you're passionate about, that you really believe in, and you have the data to back that up, then go to bat for yourself. Find the people that are on your team to back you up. It's something that's going to create waves, but if it's the right group of people, if it's the right organization, then maybe it might be something to consider.
One of the groups that you could enlist, people that you can put your arm around in that grouping, would be your customer. Because when you go to your manager, leader, whomever, You have a lot more credibility when somebody in your grouping happens to be a paying customer, right? So you could do that, right? It may have been done in places, not saying where or when, but so when a customer comes in and says that, people are going to sit up and listen. Otherwise, they're going to say, you're a product manager, you have a product to manage, I'm busy, right? And they're going to shut you down. That's what typically happens, especially in the case where you don't have leaders, you have managers. And if they're lucky, they have leaders, but if they're not, they have managers, right? So you just can't get through that whole structure thing. The hierarchy, we would talk about the dual operating system, all of that stuff. The reality is people listen to customers, enlist a customer who has those pains that they're experiencing and say, potentially we might have a solution, but I cannot promise. Will you come in with me, right? And if you get them with you, hey, it doesn't matter if it's a manager or a leader, you're going to get airtime with that person. And that's the biggest thing you can get. So I'm going to say today on that front.
I guess we're done then. So if we recorded for a very long time on this podcast. It's probably going to be longer than our normal podcast. But I feel we could have gone another 45 minutes because I have a lot of stuff. I want to have a second and maybe a third podcast on this topic. We said we wanted to be a lot more tactical about how you create these strategies and who you involve in that. Okay, so that we'll put that aside, and that'll be a separate podcast. But I also want to have a companion podcast. This will probably be a quick 30, 45 minute podcast about how to spot that your company is lacking in strategies by observing what your company is doing instead of advancing one of these strategies. Because I feel there's a lot of things that companies do. If you've ever been in a company where you work for someone that says, okay, you need to go off for a month and come up with all the requirements of what they want. Wait a minute. Do I really need to do that? I've been in project management focused organizations that's what they feel. They feel that is going to advance the company. I'm like, you're just making plans. What do you? So I think there are 2 companion podcasts in different directions, like how to spot that your company is kind of off track with strategies. And the other one is how to really tactically getting everyone on the same page with strategies. I wanted to dig into the alignment that you were throwing out, but I don't know if it's I think it might be part of the how to actually create the strategy podcast. So I'll leave it for that one. I'll leave my pushback for that one. So with that, Nisha, thanks for being here. Wrap us up.
All right. So if you're still with us, thank you. Thank you for being with us. First of all, thank you all for staying with us, both of you. Let us know what else you'd like us to talk about in the comments below. And please don't forget to like and subscribe.
If you like this podcast, share it with a friend.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. We may have more podcasts around the same topic. And last but not least, if you're in that organization where you really have nobody listening to your voice but yourself, keep that resume updated.